we're going to actually do macroevolution part 1 and part 2 today. Somebody tell me, we actually talked a little bit about on Friday, what is macroevolution? Yeah, well, we know microevolution is little change, macroevolution is big change, but better than that. I think somebody said it over there. What'd you say? Yeah, like the evolution of a new species. So we said last week that microevolution was changing what? Allele frequency. Microevolution, changing DNA, changing like the formula P and Q. The percentage changed. There's a little change in the population. Macroevolution is where a population has changed so much, it's a new species. And I think that that's something that's hard to grasp in my head. Like, I can understand that allele frequency changes, like P and Q changes because people move in or move out. I can get that in my head. I have a hard time grasping that the population changed so much, we consider it a different species. Do y'all have a hard time grasping that, or is it just me? No, you got it. And I think about the example I've given you several times now, the staph and how staph was killed by penicillin. Right? In 1960, staph, the bacteria, was killed by the antibiotic penicillin. 20 years later or so, it wasn't. Staph was resistant to penicillin. So we say staph changed. It evolved. Staph evolved to be now resistant. But now what you and I know is that means it got a plasmid to make a new protein, and that protein helped it to not be killed by penicillin. Okay? Then they made the drug methicillin. It worked. Now it doesn't. They made erythromycin. It worked. Sorry, excuse me. Now it doesn't. Today, I think they use vancomycin, which is a stronger antibiotic. Vancomycin is prescribed if you have a staph infection. Okay, 2014, is staph the same species as it was in 1980? So Marissa says no. What do y'all? I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just, what do you think? Is it the same species? Ben, what do you think?
I think it is. It just changed.
Yeah, so Ben says it is the same species. It's just evolved. Well, the old penicillin has been replaced, and now there's a new penicillin. Be it the same species or not, it's been replaced. So when I think about it that way, I'm like, okay, so new species can evolve into existence. You know, either they replace old ones or, you know, they evolve from the old ones and the old ones are still there. Okay, so looking at macroevolution, first, tell me, somebody, what, we talked about this before. What is a species? Define that for me. Come on now, somebody talk. Yeah, a group of individuals that can interbreed, but better than that, they can produce fertile offspring. Okay, so you and I, we're all people. We're all the same species because we can produce living, fertile. What does fertile mean? Make a baby, right? They can produce living, fertile offspring, and our DNA is similar, right? We're the same species. We got similar DNA. And we can produce fertile offspring, right? So our species in general can do that. Okay, so looking at your notes, just on the things you should already know, one thing I want to point out, because I think you know all of them except maybe this one. Number 4 says positional and pattern genes are in the group referred to as Hox genes. Do y'all remember talking about Hox genes before Christmas? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That might be something you've forgotten. Hox genes is a set of DNA that we all have, and it like gives you your heart's right here, your lungs are right here, your position, your intestines, you stand upright on 2 feet. Yeah, like locational genes, kind of. But Hox genes are what we call master control genes. So maybe write that in by 4. Master control genes, and they turn on and off other genes.
They're still inside us?
Yeah, they're still inside of us for sure.
Were they used?
Yeah, and like, well, no, they're not used anymore after development. But like a frog has different Hox genes than us, and that's why they're shaped different. So that's something that we all have that makes us be the same position. So Hox genes are master control genes. Okay, so moving on to macroevolution, all I want you to highlight is, and you remember apoptosis is programmed cell death, but you knew that. Okay, where it says macroevolution, highlight a new taxon, a new species. So macroevolution is studying the creation of a new species. But instead of calling it a new species evolved, we say speciation occurred. So the word speciation is a new species. I feel like that word is hard to say. Speciation. It's got lots of... It's so hard to say. Speciation. So speciation is the evolving of a new species. Okay, so the next thing under speciation says anagenesis and cladogenesis. Those two things are important. So put a little star by those two bold words. Okay, anagenesis is where one species is replaced by a new species. So do you see, look at this blue bird right here, blue and green bird, whatever. This bird evolved and changed, and now it's this bird. The bird on the top. So if you're looking at it, the blue, the one with the blue top, and then the word, we'll say the teal top, it replaced the old one. So in other words, all of the one on the bottom changed, and we'll call this one A. All of species A changed and changed and changed and changed and changed. And now A is all gone. It's dead. And B is there. So it's a new species. A totally new species, and that's called anagenesis. Ana means without. And so it's like without a break. There wasn't like one divided into two, like on cladogenesis. One changed and evolved into two. Or it like broke, and it like broke off. Anagenesis is the evolution in one direction. Cladogenesis, the other picture. A new species replaced another one. Cladogenesis is where this one species evolved, and now there's two different ones. So the breaking off of a species. Last night on the video, you watched about the finches, and it was like, now he said, how many finches are there? 9. I was thinking 9 or 14, something like that. Does anybody remember how many species of finches? Okay, well, I can't really remember. But anyway, you can imagine that if they started out as one finch, and it evolved and changed, and now there's, 9 or 15 or however many different ones, what would that be? Anagenesis or cladogenesis? Cladogenesis, right? It broke off. Now, it was one, and now there's several. Anagenesis, like if you think about the penicillin story, one species of penicillin is gone, and there's a new one now. Staph. One species of staph has completely been replaced by the other one, and that would be what kind of speciation? Anagenesis.
Isn't penicillin is it a bacteria or what is penicillin?
Penicillin is the antibiotic.
But is it what is it made of?
It was made out of a mushroom. It was made out of a mold, fungi.
So would it also be a new species?
No, but we use the same drug. It's the same.
It's just something different? You said that just bacterized it?
Yeah, okay. Penicillin is a mold. It's actually, the name of the mold is Penicillium notatum, but we named it that. The name is a mold that kills staph. Right? So, no, I don't think that mold has changed. Not to my knowledge.
So they're just, what are they adding to it to make it stronger?
Oh, they didn't. They took the drug penicillin and they chemically changed it. Like they put more drugs with it and made methicillin. Yeah, so it's like the same. They use the same fungi, but they use more drugs with it. So like better drugs. Okay, that was a really good question. Okay, so we already said at the beginning of class. So that's why we're doing 2 and 3 together, because you already know some of this part. The next part of the notes, a species, we define that is if they can produce living, fertile offspring, right? And that's called the biological species concept. Biological species concept. They can produce living, fertile offspring. Okay, so this next part of the notes, you see where it says biological species concept. Highlight that. Based on, highlight genetic similarity, ability to produce viable, fertile offspring. Highlight all that. So, genetic similarity, ability to produce viable means living, fertile, able to have a baby, offspring. Okay, so do you see where it says A, pre-zygotic barriers? Okay, what does pre-zygotic mean? Come on, make me proud. Before the zygote, right? So for whatever reason, these two organisms are not the same species because they couldn't form a zygote. Like the sperm and the egg never got together. Okay, why? Let's say there's this species. Why could my egg and that sperm never get together? Okay, no, the chromosomes are, the sperm and egg go together. The chromosomes met. Yeah. So why could the sperm and egg never even see each other? Just think about it. My egg, this sperm can never get together. Why? No, think. Yeah, anything. Why could it not work? Like, why would the sperm and the egg never get together? This is not hard. Y'all are thinking like enzymes and chromosomes.
They're not genetic.
Yeah. Well, that. But, okay, y'all, my soulmate, he could be in China. But we're never going to get together. Because he lives all the way in China, and I'm not going to China. You see what I'm saying? So this is, they may be similar, but they can't make a baby because the first one says habitat isolation. They can't get together. Me and the guy in China are on different continents. Okay, so now are you see what I'm asking you now? Does this make sense now? Okay, so the first one for pre-zygotic, what that means is the zygote was never formed. Pre-zygotic barrier, zygote never formed is, this is the picture out of the book, but it doesn't teach you a whole lot, I don't think. Habitat isolation is the first one. The example given in the book is about snakes. And there's these two snakes species that are really similar, except one lives in the water and the other one lives on land. They can never reproduce because they're in different places. If you take that snake, both of those snakes in the lab, they will make a living, fertile offspring. But in nature, it never happens. Why? They don't live together. They're separated geographically. Does that make sense? Okay. I would think about like maybe fish. If you have the same species of fish, but one of them is in one pond and the other one is in another pond, they can't reproduce because they are geographically separated. So you understand habitat isolation now, right? Okay, the next one is behavioral isolation. And this one is where the dance isn't good enough. The dance of the blue-footed boobies, you know how they lift up their legs and they flap their arms and sing? Okay, well, if the dance isn't good enough, or maybe better than that, maybe they don't recognize the dance. So like two different species, they could mate, but they never do because they don't recognize the species. And this is seen a lot of times in birds. Like two birds probably could mate. Their DNA is similar enough. But birds call on each other with their songs or with their dances, and they don't recognize that that's like the reproductive song because it's a different species song. So write on your paper, blue-footed booby or birds don't recognize song, something like that. Oh, so these are not in the right order, my bad. We just talked about behavioral, which is there. So behavior, you wrote in, the song isn't identified, or blue-footed booby. Okay, the next one on your notes is temporal. Timing is wrong. Okay, example. This is my example. Don't write this down. Deer in Alabama go through rut, right? And that's, do you know when it is? Anybody? Like what time is that? It's like when they want to make a baby, the girls, and they make puddles and they have a certain smell and all the big butt come out for rut because they want to mate with the girls. Okay, well, in Tennessee it gets colder faster, and so rut is about a month earlier. And so deer species in Tennessee and Alabama, they are geographically separated also. But if they weren't, They mate at different times so they wouldn't mate together. Does that make sense? So temporal is timing. Okay, the example in the book are these two skunks that live up north. And one of the skunks, they're both black and white, they look alike, but one of the species always mates in the winter and the other one always mates in the summer. Late winter and late summer. So they never mate together because the timing isn't right. Timing isn't right. So you got, geographically they live apart. They didn't recognize the dance. Or the third one is timing is wrong. So y'all know how like dogs go into heat? So what if, the boy dog isn't ready? But I think the boy dog is always ready. I think it's the female that goes into heat.
Yeah.
So that's not a perfect example. Okay, so we got habitat, behavior, temporal, mechanical. This one is like a little bitty toy teacup Shih Tzu or whatever. Little bitty teeny tiny fluffy muffy. Can't mate with a Great Dane. Little teeny tiny can't mate with a pit bull. Why? The parts, like literally the reproductive organs don't fit. The little one would die. If it was the girl especially. Okay, the example, don't write that down. That's not the example in the book. Although that's the best example ever. The example in the book is about snails. And snails, their little shells either go clockwise or counterclockwise. So you know what a snail looks like and how they have the little curled shells? Okay, well if one of them goes clockwise and the other one goes counterclockwise, the openings, they won't fit. Like the reproductive parts cannot ever go together because one of them was rotated one way and the other one's rotated the other way. So it's like the shells open up down. And if they both rotate clockwise, then they can turn and they both open up that way. They can make it work. So snails they've like separated themselves in species, clockwise and counterclockwise, because they can't reproduce the other way. So that's the example. Write down snails. The way the snail shell, is that a shell, I guess? Yeah. Turns. However, the toy Shih Tzu and the Great Dane are much easier to understand. Funnier, yeah. Okay, and then the last one. So all of these are prezygotic. Why did the sperm and the egg never get together? Why did the sperm and egg never get together? Okay, so the last one is gametic isolation. They had sex. Both sperm and egg were available, but they never went together. The sperm didn't recognize the egg. So nothing to do with chromosomes, but the sperm, like you know how when a male and a woman, when the sperm gets to the egg, it has to like swim all the way up the fallopian tubes to the egg. Yes, you know that story? Okay, well, the sperm doesn't recognize the egg. So in humans, what's the tip of the sperm called? Come on, Annika, where are you at? Acrosome. In humans, the acrosome, it identifies the egg and it penetrates right through the egg. And the two sets of DNA go together. Yes, you know that? Okay, well, that doesn't happen for some reason. Okay, what do you think that it does? How do you think it recognizes this cell membrane? The proteins, right? You have proteins on your cell membrane. They're called antigens, but surface proteins would do good. On your egg, girls, and the boy sperm recognizes those surface proteins and it knows, hey, this is an egg, not a fallopian tube cell. Right? This is the egg, not the fallopian tube. So it knows to go into the egg. Okay, so the example in the book is sea urchins. And there's red sea urchins and purple sea urchins. And the red sea urchins release eggs. And the red sea urchins release sperm. And in the ocean, the egg and the sperm find each other and mate. Sea urchins? Urchin. Okay, so the red ones release the eggs. The red ones release the sperm. In the ocean, the egg and the sperm get together. And it makes the sea urchin baby. Same thing with the purple ones. Egg, sperm, get together, baby. But for some reason, we don't really know why. I guess the surface proteins are just different. The purple egg and the red sperm don't recognize each other. So because the surface proteins are different, I guess. Okay, so take a second. Let's go through it one more time. Habitat, different location. Behavioral, different song. Temporal, timing is off. Mechanical, the parts don't fit. Gametic, sperm and egg don't recognize each other. So take a second, kind of go through those in your head, because I've seen for response where you have to write this. So just take a second. Those are pre-zygotic barriers. Okay, so these are reasons why they can't make a fertile offspring, right? So the next one is post-zygotic, and if you can remember those words, you can remember it. Okay, what does reduced mean? Lack of, loss, subtract, right? Reduced is less than. Okay, hybrid, two different organisms get together. Okay, and then what does viability mean? Living. What does fertility mean? Ability to reproduce. Like, you know that when someone... Like if a person's having a hard time having a baby, they go to a fertility treatment, or they take fertility drugs. That's like to help them get pregnant. Okay, so let's go. Reduced, two organisms get together. Living. That's where the two organisms get together. They make the sperm and egg, and they make the sperm, they make the egg. They go together, but a baby is never formed. On viability, the baby is never formed, or it doesn't live long. So it's like sperm and egg, they meet, they make a zygote, but it doesn't live long. The example is a salamander in the book. And so there's two different species of salamander, hybrid, two different species. They mate, they make a baby, but the baby salamander doesn't live long. So you got that. Reduced, less is like less than living when two different organisms mate. Okay, the next one is reduced hybrid fertility. You know what that means? Somebody tell me. Do what? Yeah, it's like two different species got together, made a baby. Baby was born. Baby is sterile. Sterile means can't make a baby. The baby can't have an offspring. The baby is not fertile. Example. Come on, you know this.
Wait, so I have a question,
Mule. Yes, ma'am. It's like there's lots of examples. But now, I've had somebody in last period ask me, what about if two humans can't have a baby? They're still the same species. You know, just because you can't have a baby, you're not a different species. So this is talking about when two different species mate and the baby doesn't live long. Or when two species mate and the baby can't have a baby. The baby is sterile. So this is there, and I've had lots of people ask today. There's other reasons, like a miscarriage. There's lots of reasons for a miscarriage. Like maybe the zygote didn't implant in the uterus right. You know, it has to stick to the uterus. Or maybe the sperm and the egg, there were mutations in there, so the DNA wasn't right. I've actually read before that's the most common reason for a miscarriage, is there were complications with the sperm and egg. And there was something wrong with the baby's like chromosome number or their DNA. So there's lots of reasons why why they miscarry. Not this. Humans are the same species. So, so did that answer your question? Good. Okay, so two different species have a baby, and that baby is not fertile. Come on, example, you know this, real life. Mule, right? Horse, donkey, the mule. Mule cannot have children. Mules are like bigger than horses, but they're short like donkeys. And somebody told me last period that mules, I don't know if this is true, but they can see their back legs and their front legs, and horses can't. The reason they told me that, my mom went to the Grand Canyon a couple years ago, and she there's like a little trail down the Grand Canyon, and you can pay to go down it. and she rode a mule to the bottom of it. So the mule had to carry her like all the way down. And so the reason they use mules is because they can see their back feet, so they can see not to step off the ledge. I don't know if that's true, but that's cool. Is that true? You knew that? Oh.
I just know that horses can't see. They can only see like on
But
the outside.
so mules and the reason donkeys and horses can't have a fertile offspring, or they're not the same species, is because the chromosome number. So the mule has a trisomy on one of the chromosomes, and that's why it can't produce offspring. It can't ever make sperm or egg. But its chromosome number isn't perfect. Like, it's not diploid for all of its chromosomes. Okay, so we got reduced living, reduced fertility, and then hybrid breakdown is like, okay, the two species can make a baby. And that baby can make a baby like maybe once or twice, but not a whole bunch. So just pretend like a mule could have a baby one time, but it couldn't have like a second baby or like a third baby. The example in the book is rice. It's not very interesting. But there's rice species, like, you know, like the plant, rice. Rice species and another rice species, they can make a crossbreed hybrid, but that crossbreed can only reproduce like once, as opposed to reproduce a whole bunch. So, hybrid breakdown, it loses the ability to reproduce. Okay, so you got 5 reasons why the zygote and sperm can't get together. And then you have 3 reasons why the offspring isn't wonderful. It's not alive, it isn't fertile, and then it breaks down. It can't reproduce a whole bunch. Okay, you think you got those things? You got to know all of that is called biological species concept. Okay, the next thing, y'all remember when I said back in ecology, I said 2 species with the same niche can't occupy the same space. What was that called? I'm going to need y'all to dig deep and come up with that word. 2 species that occupy the same, and we talked about the deer and the kangaroo and how they can't live in the same place.
The start with A.
Oh, man. Come on.
What's the start with?
I'm not telling you. Come on, you got this. I can't hear you over there. How do you? It starts with a C.
Is it competition something or competitive something?
Competitive something? I can't believe y'all don't know this.
Like, I can see it in my head, I just can't. Competitive.
Good. Competitive exclusion model. It's where 2 organisms can't occupy the same, 2 species. Like the deer and the kangaroo. They can't occupy the same niche. So that's just another way of looking at it. Like, they have a niche and they have a niche, so they're different species. Well, these 2 have the same niche, so they're the same species. That's just another way of looking at what's the definition of a species. Ecological species concept. I just think that one would be kind of hard to identify. Like, this squirrel has the same niche as this squirrel, so they're the same. But this squirrel has a little bit different niche. That would just be hard to... Don't y'all think that would be hard to see? So, that's ecological species concept. So just highlight the word niche. And then phylogenetic, you're looking at DNA. You've seen a picture just like this before, but it was in a table form. Okay, so the amino acid sequence of hemoglobin. What's hemoglobin? Come on, Lexipedia. What's hemoglobin? Yeah, it's the protein in your blood that holds oxygen. So all humans have the same amino acid sequence. Like, amino acids are what makes up protein. So cysteine, methionine, guanine, like all the different ones that make up the amino acid, that make up the protein. So humans and humans, 100% alike. That's the segment that we all have. Humans and monkeys, for that one protein, there's only 5% difference. Now, don't go home and say that I said we're 95% just like a monkey. I did not say that. I said that one protein is 95% the same. Yes? Okay, that one protein is 87% the same in a mouse. So, where it says phylogenetic species concept, highlight compares DNA or amino acid sequence. And basically, if you have a lot in common, you're the same species. If you don't, then you're not. That's what that says. And that makes a lot of sense, I think, to compare DNA. Okay, so 3 ways to look at what's a species. Biological species concept, can they make a baby? Phylogenetics is looking at DNA, and then ecological is looking at niche. All right, questions on these? Okay, go ahead and flip to macro part 2. Okay, so macroevolution, new species. This isn't hard. It looks long in big paragraphs, but it's not. Allopatric is where 2 species evolve, like one evolves into 2, in a different location. So highlight different place. Or maybe highlight geographic barrier. Different place. Sympatric, on down further, is same place. SYM means what? Together. It's like symbiotic relationship. They live together. So allopatric, different place. Sympatric, same place. Same place. Okay, example. Ready? Yes, ma'am.
Are we about to go through all the words underneath this, or just skip them?
No, we're going to go through all of them. I was just defining those 2 first. You with me? Allopatric is apart. Sympatric is together. Okay, example. The Great Wall of China. I've never seen it, but I've heard of it. Remember, my boyfriend's over there kidding about that. Okay, the Great Wall of China separates the organisms on one side and the other side. Yes, you follow me? Okay, so the organisms on one side, like let's say there's these trees on one side. And those trees can't mate, they can't reproduce with the trees on the other side. They can blow their pollen, but it's not going to ever get over that huge wall. Okay, so over time, the plants on one side have evolved and evolved and evolved and evolved. And the plants on the other side have evolved until they've evolved so much that they can't reproduce together even if they were in the same place. Because they're so different in DNA. Does that make sense? So they evolved over here and they evolved on that side and they can't reproduce together. Okay, that's called allopatric or sympatric? Allopatric. They're separated by the wall. Got it? Same thing could happen with a mountain. You got a species of plants on one side, a species of plants on the other. Right in the middle, they can't reproduce because there's a mountain separating them. So allopatric is where 2 species have evolved, and now there's 2 different species. Okay. Sympatric example, there are squirrels out there, and a certain little family of squirrels has a mutation, and they change, and they change, and they change, and they change, and they have offspring that change, and offspring, and over a period of time now, out there in that one forest, there's 2 species of squirrels. And that would be sympatric, where the 2 evolved together. Okay, so here's a picture that's always in the book. Like allopatric, sympatric. Those 2 words are important. You need to know what both of those words mean. Allopatric, they're separated. So like the picture on the left. Sympatric, they're together like the picture on the right. Okay, so looking at just allopatric, it says ring species. I really think that this is like not a very, I just don't know that this should be the term. But what it is where a species evolves around a barrier. So highlight around a barrier. Ring species is where a species evolves around a barrier. So, for example, this salamander right here is right here, and it changes, and it changes, and it changes, and it changes around the barrier. So it's like almost like a pattern to it. I don't know. So highlight that. Around a geographic barrier. Okay, the next word you already know. I've just never called it this. Okay, remember when I told you the Galapagos Islands? Okay, so here is, the Galapagos Islands are right there to the left of South America. Right here, do you see them? Oh, man. Right there. They're right there to the left of South America. See where it says Galapagos Islands? Okay, so let's say here is South America. Over on the right-hand side. I'm having a hard time. Geez, okay, I'm here. Here's South America. I should have been an artist. Why am I a teacher? That looks just like South America. Kidding. Okay, but we're going to call South America the mainland. You've heard this before. I told you that Darwin wrote about this in his book. How when it was like they ran out of food. This was his theory. They ran out of food, and so some of them moved to this island. So I'm going to call this Galapagos Island number 1. They reproduced exponentially. They were thriving. When they started to compete, some of the turtles moved here. So we're going to call that Galapagos Island number 2. Okay, let's say a little family of them went there, and they reproduced exponentially, and everything was great. When they started to run out of food, they moved here to Galapagos Island number 3. And they reproduced, and then they moved to 4. And then they moved to 5. Y'all remember me talking about this? That was in the book? Okay, and so what he said is that the further away you get from the mainland, the more evolution there has been, the more that they've changed. Well, that makes sense because they went to 1 and they evolved. And so some of those evolved ones went to 2 and they evolved there. And some of the evolved ones went to 3 and they evolved there. So some of the evolved ones went to 4. So it's like by the time you got to 5, they're a lot different than the ones on the beginning. And he wrote about the turtles and their necks. So it was like on the mainland, they're all nose down. And then they raise their head a little bit, until they get to Island 5 and they're like giraffe turtles. They look like giraffes, like they can reach their head up. Not really like a giraffe, you are supposed to laugh. But you got the picture. Okay, so the thing is you need to know adaptive radiation. You know what adapt means, right? Okay, radiate, think about like it radiated out. And it went to the next one, and it went to the next one, like radiation. So you need to know that. You already know the process. Now you just need to put a word with it. Adaptive radiation. So highlight, it's like 4 lines down. Species population move farther out to the next island, causing the process of evolution to occur. So ultimately what happens is that each island has a different species. Okay? So we already said St. Patrick is in the same place. Highlight same environment. If you're in the same environment, you're competing. You're trying to out compete each other for food. Okay, so what organisms do you think reproduce? What organisms do you think evolve faster? Bacteria evolve fast. Why? Because they reproduce fast. Bacteria evolve fast because they reproduce fast. Do you remember me saying that plants evolve faster than animals? Does anybody know why? Plants evolve faster than animals. Why? They reproduce faster too. But another reason, you know how we are diploid? What does diploid mean? 2 sets of each chromosome. Some plants have 3 sets or more than 3 of each chromosome. So like sex cells are haploid. Animal cells, for the most part, are diploid. And like strawberries and bananas, they're both what we call polyploidy. They have 3 for every one of them. So instead of having 2 that cross over and independently assort, they have 3 that cross over and independently assort. So they have way more variation. Yes, ma'am?
How would that work with the alternation of generations? It starts off.
I guess it's like haploid to triploid. But don't write about that. Write diploid to haploid. It's not all plants, it's just some plants. So most plants are diploid, but some plants are triploid. Or once it's like 1, 2, many. So triploid and polyploidy are the same thing. But yeah, did y'all hear Heidi's question was like really a good question? Like if she gets to write about alternation of generation, which is diploid to haploid. Y'all remember that? It's all coming back to you. We'll write about diploid and haploid, not polyploidy. Unless it specifically states that it's triploid. Okay. Good question, Heidi. Okay, so A and B, autopolyploidy is where it fertilizes itself. Allopolyploidy is where it's cross-pollination. Y'all know the difference in self-pollination and cross-pollination, right? Self is where my sperm and my pollen and my ovule of a plant make one plant. So self-pollination, and then cross-pollination is where the pollen goes somewhere else. I know we're all sitting here wanting warm weather. With the warm weather comes the pollen.
I'm okay with that.
Me too. Bring on the pollen.
I think I met us to fix
Take away the ice.
that. I think I met us to fix that.
Yeah, really. Okay, so I think you got that. Here's a picture showing the chromosome. So there's more than 2. Okay, the next thing, punctuated equilibrium. You already know this too. You just didn't know what it was called. Jay Gould was a man, and he said that evolution is really slow. So it's like slow, slow, slow. Asteroid. It changes quick. Slow, slow, slow. And then the continents drift apart, and it's Pangea. I did those backwards. But so punctuated equilibrium is highlight long periods of stability interrupted by sudden disruptions. So basically what he said was there's like not very much change. It's like stable, 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 stable. Boom, something big happens and there's a lot of change. And then stable. Y'all remember us talking about this? We talked about the history and we said catastrophism? Yes? Okay, so now you just know that it's called punctuated equilibrium. Slow, fast. Slow, fast. Example, or here's the difference. Gradual versus punctuated equilibrium. So on the left, you can see it's gradual. One butterfly replaces another, replaces another, replaces another. And then punctuated equilibrium is where there's breaks. Okay, so this is the reason. You remember me telling you that they have fossil records that date back to like 1 billion years ago? And they're like, here's they laid them out. There's the fossil. There's this and this and this and then this and then this. But for some reason in their fossil records, there's like 10,000-year gaps. Like they can't find, like they found this animal and they found this animal, but they can't find the animal that should have gone in between it. Does that make sense? It's like we think that this animal evolved and is now this animal. But there's not like an intermediate step. So it wasn't gradual. It was like boom, boom. The only ones that survived were this one. So that's their reasoning as to why there's these huge missing gaps in fossil records. It's not like they don't have fossils that's like this algae became this plant and this plant became this plant and this protozoan, which is like a protist, became this animal, became this animal, became this animal. It's not like a perfect map. There's huge gaps in the fossils. Does that make sense? And so their reasoning is because it's punctuated. So punctuated equilibrium, long periods of stability, change. Long, stable, fast change. Long. So, okay, he wrote about this in his book. So he said first, the whole planet was snowball Earth. It was cold. But when that melted, it changed the planet, and lots of organisms came about, like plants and animals. And then came about Pangea. And Pangea made us change. And then came about the asteroid that hit the Earth. Somebody last period was asking why some people don't believe in dinosaurs. Well, dinosaurs, we have fossils for dinosaurs. Like, there's no question as to whether there were dinosaurs on the planet. There were. There's huge fossils that show that there were. And then now they're gone. So this is one theory as to what happened. An asteroid killed them.
What's the other theory?
I don't know. Okay, that next thing where it says number 2, microevolution can cause macroevolution. All right, somebody tell me what that means, and I won't talk about it. Micro leads to macro. Yeah, little changes in alleles over time create a whole new species. Perfect. Okay, and then the last thing is just an example of evolution. It says descent with modification. That you know what descent with modification means, right? Children who got changes, right? Lex said it perfect when she said like evolution. That's what it means. It means evolution. Okay, so this is just an example. So we think that natural selection chooses against the traits that don't work, right? If you got a trait that doesn't work, then you're going to die. If it's like a liver death kind of trait. And something better is going to replace that trait. Okay, so the example here, and you don't have to know all this, like what kind of eye organisms have. This is just an example. But it talks about how, and I'm not going to redo this because you can just listen to me. A jellyfish they have one eye on the bottom, and it doesn't allow them to like see color or shape like ours. All it allows them to see is depth perception. Like they can tell if they're like, here's the jellyfish and here's the food. They can tell how close they are to the food. But that's about it. They can't see anything as far as like color or anything like that. It says that a jellyfish has an oscule, which is almost like, it's not, but it's kind of like your eyes when your eyes are closed. You know how you can tell if there's something like right in front of you? Okay, that's kind of like what jellyfish can tell. But that's all they can tell. Or you can tell even if your eyes are closed, if somebody cuts the light on or off, you can tell. It wakes you up. Is that how your mama wakes you up in the morning? Cut the light on? My mom used to do that. Okay, so then it's saying, this paragraph is saying that because that was not effective, now the next organism up has a better eye. And the next organism up is a platyhelminthes. That's a little bitty flatworm. If it were to get inside you, it makes you real sick. Y'all know platyhelminthes. You've heard me talk about that. Okay, well, they have eyes that are more like, it's called an eye spot, but theirs are like dented in. So that, you know how our eyes are out big? Well, platyhelminthes have dented in eyes. I've also heard them called like an eye cup. Well, if you live in the ocean and you don't have an eyelid and your eyes are dented in, what happens is sand gets in them and they go blind. So most flatworms are blind. Their eyes don't do any good because sand gets in them and scratches them, and so that's not good. So evolution, the next one up. So you see platyhelminthes didn't work out. So the next organism up, which is a mollusk or an annelid. Annelid is like a segmented worm, like a caterpillar. It's segmented. They have an eye that is called an eye spot. It's down further in, so it's like protected further. It doesn't open very much, so it has like a little opening. So sand doesn't get in it. Does that make sense? So it's like a little bit better. Okay, the next one, which is a little bit better, is an arthropod. Arthropods have the coolest eyes, where we have one lens in each eye, but we can see one picture. Like when I look at you, I see one picture, not two. Right? Okay, well, arthropods, like insects, flies, they have a bunch of lenses, like multiple lenses on each eye. So they have like a bunch on the right and a bunch on the left. And they can see like in all directions. But they see multiple pictures. So they see like 20 different pictures in each eye. That gives me a headache thinking about it. But you know when you used to look through a kaleidoscope and there were like different pictures in it? It's kind of like that. Or that's what I think it's like in my head. Okay, but mosquitoes don't have eyelids, so they're not protected. So the next, fish and mammals and reptiles, we all have eyelids. So we have a muscle that comes down over our eye and protects it. So this was just an example of how one feature has changed over the course of organisms. So that was just an example there, kind of like, showing how it progressively got better if you look at the animals. One thing to note on descent with modification is it's just a theory. I'm not saying that jellyfish became platyhelminthes, or I'm not saying that platyhelminthes became caterpillars. It's just what they've done is they say, okay, this animal has this eye, and this animal has this eye. So this eye evolved into this eye. Not necessarily the truth. Does that make sense to you? Kind of? So it's just showing the progression in different kinds of eyes. Is that what that paragraph is showing? Yes, ma'am. Question.
I get that evolution is, but I don't understand how your DNA would know to mutate into something where your eyes are further in or your eyes are open.
Yeah, and did y'all hear her question? She says she doesn't get how your DNA would know to make your eyes further in or on the top. And I think that's part of it, is your DNA doesn't know. Like nothing was a choice. Like it just accidentally happened. It mutated. But you also have to think, this is a pretty, like the eye, that's a pretty far-fetched theory. Like the eye cup, the platyhelminthes evolved to go deeper with and not open as much. Like I almost feel like maybe that organism was just made, and the platyhelminthes was made, and they're trying to draw a connection between the two, when there really is no connection. But this is just showing like the progressive change, because organisms change small. So I feel like in order for this to really happen, it would be like in a little more, in a little more, in a little more. You see what I'm saying? So it'd have to be like even slower than what this is said. But really, if you think about human eyesight is so amazing. The fact that, and we talked about this when we talked about neurons, the fact that I can make a picture and close my eyes and still see it is amazing. Like I can see what my hands look like, or what my mama looks like, or what my bedroom or my car. Like I know what it looks like because I've seen it before. So your mind makes pictures, and I can see colors, and I can see that Lex is sitting behind Ben. Like that's cool. Like I can see depth and everything. So I think that eyesight is something that's just so amazing. Okay, questions on this?